You've felt it, that strange silence in your chest even when the room is full. People laugh, glasses clink, screens glow. But you're somewhere else, floating, smiling politely, but wondering why you're not really here. This isn't shyness. It's not social anxiety. It's not even loneliness in the traditional sense. It's something deeper, a kind of spiritual vacancy, a disconnect between presence and being. Søren Kierkegaard, a man born 2 centuries ago, understood this emptiness better than most modern minds. He called it despair, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet kind that creeps in when you realize you've been performing a life instead of living it. Kierkegaard was a philosopher of solitude, not because he feared people, but because he feared what people become when they gather. The crowd, he wrote, is untruth, not just mistaken, but a lie that multiplies itself until the individual is erased. He watched how humans lose themselves in numbers, in mobs, in rituals of appearance and approval. And though he lived in 19th century Denmark, his words echo perfectly in today's algorithmic age. The crowd today is digital. It lives in timelines, hashtags, and endless loops of curated personas. But the effect is the same. When you're constantly watching others and being watched, you stop being yourself. Your thoughts flatten, your voice trembles. Yourself fractures into a highlight reel. This is not just Kierkegaard's insight. Heidegger called it the they self, a mode of being where we surrender ourselves to what others expect, think, or desire. To be seen becomes more important than to be. But what happens when the mask becomes the face? When the image is the only thing left? Kierkegaard defined despair as not being conscious of having a self. He wasn't speaking in riddles. He was issuing a diagnosis. Most people are not themselves. They are reactions, roles, masks that were rewarded so they kept them on. This despair hides well. It wears nice shoes. It gets promoted. It hosts dinner parties. But inside there is a slow unraveling, a recognition that the life you're living isn't yours. That's the source of your emptiness. Not lack of company, but lack of authenticity. And the more you fake it, the more you forget what real even feels like. It's why a compliment feels hollow. Why success feels numb. Why no number of followers can fill the space where your voice used to be. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But most never claim that privilege because it demands sacrifice, the sacrifice of illusion. We become what we believe others want from us, and slowly, imperceptibly, we become strangers to ourselves. You wear a mask so often you forget you're wearing one at all. Kierkegaard believed the self is not a fixed object, but a relationship. A dynamic unfolding between who you are now and who you're meant to become. But when that relationship is abandoned, when you betray your values, deny your curiosities, mute your own voice, you collapse inward. The emptiness you feel around people is the echo of that collapse. You're not longing for others. You're longing for the self that got left behind. And no amount of conversation will soothe that until you return to what is most real within you. This collapse isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It looks like endless scrolling, like laughing at jokes you don't find funny, like living a calendar full of things you never chose. Solitude for Kierkegaard was not isolation, it was confrontation. To be alone, truly alone is to sit in the presence of your unlived life. No distractions, no applause, just the raw encounter between you and what you've ignored. It is here in this crucible of quiet that the self begins to speak again. Not through words, but through longing. You remember the things that once stirred your soul, the ideas that made your eyes widen, the questions you buried beneath practicality. In solitude, you stop performing, and for a moment you simply are. This kind of solitude isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Because the voice within is soft, and the world is loud. Camus wrote, "A man without ethics is a wild beast loosed upon this world." But how can we find our ethics, our compass, if we never sit still long enough to hear them? If these thoughts resonate with something quiet inside you, your like or subscribe would mean more than you think. For a small channel like this, it helps these ideas reach the people who need them most. Kierkegaard did not romanticize the authentic life. He knew it was excruciating, because to be yourself means to disappoint others, to walk away from applause, to be misunderstood, even mocked. But he also knew the alternative was death, not the physical kind, but the slow erosion of the soul. He saw people so desperate to be accepted that they willingly erased themselves, and he whispered to them through his writing, "Don't become the crowd, become you." That task, to become yourself, is the greatest rebellion in a world of mimicry. It is not loud, it is not glamorous, but it is the only way to feel whole again. Nietzsche later echoed this idea. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Finding your why starts with confronting your who. The emptiness is not a punishment. It's a signal, a call to return. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've grown tired of pretending. And when you start to walk that quiet path, when you stop chasing attention and start seeking alignment, things begin to shift. You may lose friends. You may spend more time in silence. You may feel the ache of shedding old selves. But in their place, a voice returns. Yours. It may be soft at first, but it's honest. And it will guide you through the dark. Every choice you make in that direction, however small, is a vote for reality, a gesture toward the sacred. And though the world may never reward you for it, your soul will recognize itself again. Kierkegaard wrote, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are." And maybe that's the pain you've been carrying. Not that others don't see you, but that you don't see you anymore. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs the one thing only you can offer, your truth. So if you feel empty, don't run from it. Listen to it. Let it be the doorway. Because on the other side of emptiness is everything real. In many ways, society rewards performance over presence. We are trained, often unconsciously, to perform normalcy, to smile, to nod, to say we're fine, even when we're falling apart inside. This social contract is rarely questioned, because questioning it risks discomfort, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. It reveals the invisible scaffolding we've all agreed to keep intact. But Kierkegaard would argue that this performance is precisely what distances us from ourselves. When we prioritize fitting in over being honest, we begin to rot beneath the surface. What if you told the truth more often? What if instead of saying "I'm good," you said "I feel like I'm drifting"? What if you allowed silence when you had nothing to say instead of filling it with noise? Most people fear this honesty not because it's wrong, but because it reveals how much pretending they've done too. In a world obsessed with looking okay, authenticity is radical, and sometimes that's exactly what healing requires, a radical break from pretending. Another reason you feel empty may be this: you've stopped being curious, not just about the world, but about yourself. We don't lose wonder in one day. We lose it slowly, each time we trade questions for certainty, mystery for convenience, presence for productivity. Kierkegaard believed the self was not something given, but something earned through deep reflection and inner struggle. But modern life offers little room for reflection. Instead, we are inundated with prepackaged meaning, recycled ideologies and slogans that pass for thought. The result? We feel full of information yet starved of wisdom. You may scroll through hundreds of opinions a day, but when was the last time you followed a question deep into your soul and sat with it without needing an answer? The philosopher Simone Weil once said, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." But how generous are we with ourselves? When you give your attention to your inner life, to its confusions, its aches, its longings, you begin to remember who you are beneath the noise. That return to wonder is a return to being. And being, unlike performing, does not need an audience. If this journey stirred something quiet in you, stay with us. There are more truths to walk toward. We often think of growth as addition, more clarity, more confidence, more purpose. But Kierkegaard and many existential thinkers suggest otherwise. Sometimes growth is subtraction. It is the painful, often disorienting disintegration of false selves. The shedding of identities we wore to survive, but can no longer bear to carry. This disintegration feels like death. And in a way, it is a symbolic death of the constructed self. But on the other side of that unraveling is something astonishing. Space. Space to reimagine who you might become if you are no longer bound by expectation. Space to mourn the versions of you that were never real. Space to build a self from the inside out. As the poet Rilke wrote, "You must change your life." But change, real change, begins with disintegration. Not becoming more, but becoming true. So if you're crumbling, don't panic. If you feel lost, don't rush to be found. Let the pieces fall. Let the mask crack. Because through the cracks, your real voice can finally emerge. When people hear the word faith, they think of religion. But Kierkegaard's idea of faith wasn't confined to church pews or scripture. For him, faith was existential. It was the leap one makes when logic runs out and truth must be lived, not just thought. He spoke of the leap of faith, not as blind belief, but as a courageous surrender to the unknown, even when the outcome is uncertain. In a world obsessed with guarantees, this kind of faith feels almost impossible. But Kierkegaard argued it's essential, not because it gives us answers, but because it frees us from needing them. To live authentically is to risk, to stand alone in your values even when no one claps, to walk away from security in service of something truer. This faith is not comfortable, but it is the antidote to despair. Because in that leap, in that decision to be real even when it hurts, you reclaim your agency. Not faith in a system, not faith in a guru, but faith in the possibility of becoming. There's a subtle difference between being lonely and being alone. Loneliness is a hunger, a craving for connection, often tinged with desperation. Aloneness is a posture, a state of being complete within yourself, even in silence. Kierkegaard understood that solitude wasn't a punishment. It was a path, because the crowd can never give you what you haven't first found within. If you're empty when alone, you will remain empty in company, no matter how loud the laughter or how many eyes are on you. True connection doesn't come from neediness. It comes from overflow, from two individuals meeting, not to complete each other, but to witness each other. And that witnessing begins with solitude. If you can sit with your ache, befriend your shadow, and hold space for your own silence, then when someone finally sees you, they're seeing someone whole. And that is the kind of presence that heals. Emptiness often arises not from dramatic loss, but from the slow erosion of meaning. You wake up, you check your phone, you move through the motions, nothing hurts, but nothing moves you either. This is the spiritual numbness Kierkegaard feared, the slow death of wonder. But meaning is not always found in the grand. Sometimes it's rediscovered in the smallest things. The steam rising from your coffee, the way a song cracks something open in your chest, the warmth of sunlight through a window you never noticed. These are not distractions, they are invitations to be here, to re-enchant what routine has made invisible. Kierkegaard once said that purity of heart is to will one thing, and perhaps that one thing is to be truly present, not just with others but with life itself, because the sacred is not elsewhere. It is hidden in the ordinary, waiting to be noticed again. At some point, we all inherit a script from parents, from culture, from algorithms. This is who you should be. This is what success looks like. This is what love should feel like. But the philosopher's task, and by extension your task, is to examine that script, to tear it up if needed, and to begin writing your own. Kierkegaard didn't ask his readers to believe what he believed. He asked them to believe something real, something theirs. He wasn't offering answers. He was urging people to ask better questions. What does freedom mean to you? What are you willing to lose in order to feel alive again? What truth would you still speak even if it cost you everything? These are not rhetorical. They're the compass points of a life worth living. Because to be truly human, to transcend emptiness, is not to have everything figured out. It's to walk with curiosity, conviction, and care toward a self you've never fully met, but are willing to discover. What if the revolution you're looking for isn't out there? Not in the headlines, not in the comments section, not in the next big thing. What if the most radical act you could perform was to come home to yourself? Not the self the world applauds, not the self you crafted to survive, but the one beneath all of it, quiet, bruised, unedited, still waiting for you. Kierkegaard believed that truth is not a doctrine but a life, that to be authentic is to live as if your soul were watching. And maybe that's what the emptiness has been trying to show you all along, that you are not meant to be a spectator to your own existence. You are meant to participate, to hurt, to hunger, to feel joy so real it makes you ache, to walk through your days not as an actor but as an author. This kind of life is not easy, but it is awake, and in a sleepwalking world that is enough to begin the healing. So if you feel hollow, drifting, unseen, don't numb it, don't scroll it away, sit with it, because sometimes the soul speaks through silence, and sometimes feeling empty is the first sign that you're finally ready to be filled. Not with noise, not with applause, but with the quiet weight of being real. That, Kierkegaard would say, is the beginning of becoming human.